It's 9:15 a.m. in Cheyenne, Wyoming, in the beginning of 1969. The morning quiet is about to be disrupted by a flurry of activity. Since 1935, the city of Portland has been making its stop in Cheyenne. The look of the train has changed dramatically since its beginning as the first sleeper-equipped streamlined train in the country. It's been 18 hours since this train left Chicago, and it'll be an hour and 15 minutes before it departs. That isn't a lot of time for what's about to happen. By this time, personal vehicle ownership and the airline industry have taken large bites out of the passenger train business. In 1947, the first full year of service after the rush of World War II traffic, the Union Pacific made a respectable $46 million from passenger revenue. But by the late 60s, revenue was below $10 million a year. Consider the expenses related to maintenance of equipment and payroll, and passenger trains had become a money-losing proposition. To make matters worse, the nation's railroads had lost the post office mail contracts, resulting in further lost revenue. Still, passengers deserve good food and service for an $86 coach seat between Chicago and Seattle. So once the train has dropped off everyone from the coaches to stretch their legs during the layover, the train pulls up to drop off the sleeping car passengers. And now it's time for the local switch crew to jump into action. The first step is to switch out the cafe lounge car with a clean and freshly stocked unit. An additional dome lounge and dining car will be added for first-class passengers. This action is a relatively recent development. Between 1959 and 1967, the city of Portland was combined with the city of Denver and missed servicing Cheyenne entirely. Now the city of Denver is cut off at North Platte, Nebraska, and run directly to its namesake city. And there's an impetus to these movements, for rapidly approaching Cheyenne from the south is the remnants of another formerly great name train. Once called the City of St. Louis, through service has been eliminated by the Wabash Road between St. Louis and Kansas City. Now, the city of Kansas City basically terminates in Cheyenne, and all passengers headed west transfer to other trains. While waiting for the scheduled 9:30 arrival, it's worth noting that passenger train engineers are a special breed. Not every engineer has the skill to bring a fast-moving train full of delicate china to a stop without causing considerable damage. And not every engineer can switch out Pullman cars full of sleeping passengers in the middle of the night without waking them up. Hence, there was a time on the UP where the best hoggers held down passenger assignments. As station personnel move into position to assist riders with their transfers, the mechanical ballet continues. Today, ridership is low enough that all passengers will depart with their luggage and transfer over to the city of Portland. But the rush is on, for schedules are important to maintain. There's still an army of men and women the country over whose jobs are reliant on the timetable being adhered to. With little traffic between Denver and Cheyenne to slow it down, the city of Kansas City glides into the station on track 3, on time. And that's a good thing, as it is only 15 minutes away from the arrival of the last piece of the puzzle. The seemingly slow process of switching these cars is indicative of the Union Pacific's careful and considerate treatment of its equipment. Not only does a well-maintained fleet mean a better safety record where people's lives are at stake, but the financial value of this fleet is substantial. When UP passenger operations finally end, Amtrak will end up purchasing over 150 cars of all kinds. The Alaska Railroad will buy 32 more, and the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus will buy 30 more coach and baggage cars. And of the 120 or so serviceable locomotives, many will go on under different ownership. The switch crew cuts out the sleeping cars and adds the dome lounge and diner in between them and the coach section of the train. Finally, the consist is complete, and the switch engine is in the clear. It's now 9:45 a.m., and that means the real star of the show is pulling into town. Meet the combined City of Los Angeles, the Challenger, and the City of San Francisco. Starting in 1960, the 103, known as the westbound City of Los Angeles, and the 101, known as the westbound City of San Francisco, were combined for the run from Chicago to Ogden, Utah. The 107, known as the westbound Challenger, would run as an all-coach section during the peak summer months, but by 1966, all three were lumped into the same consist. Today, 9,200 horsepower, driven by 8 prime movers, is carted to lead the way. Scheduled to leave 3 hours later than the city of Portland, all that horsepower has helped it catch up, and it will be hot on its heels all the way to Green River. 1 hour is given to change out cafe lounges and add a diner and dome lounge for the sprint across Wyoming. After it comes to rest to drop off the coach section, the yard springs to life again. The head-end power for the city of Kansas City will cut off and take its place, waiting for a spot at the busy fueling track. The switch crew will slip over and grab the remains of the city of Kansas City for cleaning and preparation for this evening's eastbound run. Safety is paramount in these situations. Bells must be ringing when engines are on the move to alert any railroad employees in the area of potential danger. Yard speed limits top out at 10 miles per hour, and even at that speed, nothing good happens when metal meets flesh and bone. The 103 pulls forward to drop off the sleeping car section as the city of Portland finishes boarding passengers. While that happens, mandatory inspections are taking place. Personnel take a walking tour of the train to check for flat spots on the wheels and dragging equipment. These preparations are important because from here on out, these trains will only stop long enough to board or let off what few passengers have bought tickets to any of the lonely little towns stretched out along Wyoming from here to Green River. With full tanks of fuel, tickets punched, and the all-important air brake test completed, the city of Portland roars to life. The 105, as the city of Portland is known on the timetables, threads its way through the maze of tracks leading out of the passenger terminal towards Tower A, where 3 main lines split towards Laramie or Denver. The grade begins where yard limits end, making for a tricky balancing act between safety and speed. For Sherman Hill has always been the scene of the dramatic struggle between man and nature. With the green board ahead, the 3 double-engined locomotives kick it into notch 8. Every mile per hour is needed to conquer the 1.5% grade and keep to the timetable. In years past, any spare locomotive could be found on the head of those passenger trains, helping to keep track speed up to the maximum 50 miles per hour going uphill. Back at the Cheyenne Depot, the switch crew is putting the 103 back together. Once the sleeper section is complete, boarding will commence. Care is taken towards proper seat assignments. Once this train reaches Ogden tonight, it will be split apart, with the San Francisco-bound traffic handed over to the Southern Pacific, in a scene that has been repeated since 1869. The final touch is added. This train is so long that the steam generators in the front locomotives can't supply the much-needed heat to the rear of the train. A boiler car is added to the back so the sleeping car patrons feel like they are getting their money's worth. Meanwhile, the 105 is making good time, and it will have to. From here on, the 103 will be a mere 15 minutes behind. No delays can be tolerated. The entire railroad gets out of the way for these trains, but since they are already losing money, the lost time for the freight schedule only adds insult to injury. Special considerations are made for the 103. It is routed up Track 3, a longer, gentler grade, built to eliminate helper service over Sherman Hill. If something goes wrong with the 105, the UP doesn't want two passenger trains stuck on Sherman Hill. And given the weight of this behemoth, the easier path is a simple decision to make. Limited to 35 miles an hour through Hermosa Tunnel, the 103 winds downgrade to Laramie. In some places, the speed limit is 25 miles an hour. Any faster than that, and the brake systems on these trains become ineffective. That's never a good thing when the next stop is at the bottom of the hill and your cargo is paying customers. The 103 has to work hard to overcome gravity as it snakes its way up the flank of the Laramie Mountains. With brake shoes smoking, the 105 rolls into Laramie. It's 7 minutes before noon. In order to make it to Green River by 4 p.m., this train is going to have to average 65 miles an hour. So its two stops at Laramie and Rollins will have to be the briefest of affairs. Back on the east slope of Sherman Hill, the 103 is still battling gravity with brute force. The lead locomotive, 951, is an E9 built in 1955. It will go on to be painted in red, white, and blue and serve as the lead locomotive on the Preamble Express, a special train that toured the country in 1974 to promote America's bicentennial. It was rebuilt in 1993 and sits to this day in Cheyenne, waiting the call to action. The second unit, 939B, is an E8 built in March of 1953. In a few months, it will be sold off to the Rock Island. The same fate awaits the next unit, 937. The last loco, 998, was actually wrecked in Oregon in 1961, but I'm not renumbering it for one movie. The 105 is anxious to start chewing up the mileposts. It's doing a fair clip by the time it hits the edge of town and heads north along the Laramie River Valley. There will be little to slow it down for the 117 miles to Rollins. The grade has been conquered as the 103 tops out at Dale Junction and begins its controlled descent down to Laramie with dynamic brakes holding it back. It's now 2:08 p.m. as the Laramie station agent impatiently waits at the door for the 103 to come to a stop. It'll be roughly 4.5 hours before these trains' eastbound counterparts come rolling into the depot, so it's nap time after a full lunch. In a few minutes, the chase is on. Carted to stay 15 minutes behind the 105, this lesson was learned the hard way. On November 12, 1951, the city of San Francisco was following one block behind the city of Los Angeles in a snowstorm when it ran a signal and plowed into the back of the cracked passenger train. 12 cars were derailed, with 20 dead and 159 injured. No one wants to repeat that mistake. So the trains roll on, flying past unused depots since the local mail trains have been discontinued. There's no slow orders in these towns anymore, and the big trains flash by like yellow lightning. This is Rollins, Wyoming, traditionally a crew change point. The 103 stops just long enough for personnel to grab their belongings and head for the door. Rollins lies just east of the first of two continental divides. Being a subdivision point and fueling station, it quickly grew into the largest town in the area and became home for the territorial prison. In the steam days, this was an important stop for the railroad. With its 20-stall roundhouse, every train stopped for fuel and helpers that were added for the westbound climb to the divide 30 miles away. Now, it's a glorified pit stop for diesel-powered freight trains, pausing just long enough to refuel and recrew. These passenger trains, however, will fill their tanks in Green River. Just east of Rollins is the company town of Sinclair, home to an oil refinery. Originally named Parco, short for the Producers and Refiners Corporation, It started in 1923, and the whole town was celebrated for its cohesiveness of Spanish colonial architecture. After being rebuilt because of an explosion that killed 17 workers in 1927, the town was renamed Sinclair after that company bought the facility in 1942. Welcome to the middle of nowhere. There's only one incorporated town between Rollins and Rock Springs. The only game to play while flying through the sagebrush and grasslands of Carbon and Sweetwater counties is to count the antelope. This is Wamsutter, Wyoming. Back in the 1870s, my great-great-grandfather, William Allen Montgomery, spent 2 years driving sheep from just north of the Grand Canyon in Arizona to the closest railhead, Wamsutter. Grandpa said the sheep drives were so large that it would take up to 7 trains to load them all for transport to eastern markets. Personally, I can't imagine how tough anyone would have to be to herd thousands of less than brilliant animals through the impossible terrain of the Colorado Plateau, like Escalante Staircase, Bryce Canyon, Arches, and Canyonlands National Parks, then over the Uinta Mountains and the Flaming Gorge to a windswept one-horse town like Wamsutter. Once across the Great Divide Basin and over the second summit at Tipton, the railroad follows Bitter Creek downhill to where it dumps into the Green River. Here we see one of the only trains allowed in the vicinity of these high-priority passengers. The heavy and slow iron ore drag plods along the route from Iron Mountain, Utah to Pueblo, Colorado. It might seem odd to send this train so far north before heading to central Colorado, but the grades here are much easier than the assault on the heart of the Rockies over Soldier Summit and Tennessee Pass. This area is the lowest in elevation of any point between Cheyenne and Ogden, Utah. Its barren cliffs and sun-drenched salt brush speaks to the high summer temperatures and dry climate. And right on time, the 103 blasts under the highway overpass. The train begins to slow down for its entrance into Rock Springs. Long famous for its high-quality bituminous coal, the city literally sits among multiple dormant mines. Because of this, Rock Springs is the 5th largest town in Wyoming and the commercial center for the southwest part of the state. Because of the mines, Rock Springs is home to over 50 different nationalities. International Day is celebrated every year with food and music from around the world. Once clogged with multiple branch lines and a huge coal marshalling yard, the mining action has moved to open-pit mines to the east, leaving most infrastructure and the local board empty. This was also once a popular passenger destination, with tour buses headed north for Teton and Yellowstone National Parks. Now, the rusty tracks and vacant parking lot stand testament to glory days long past. From here, it is a short 15-mile trip to Green River. Any work done in Rock Springs is now based out of there, the terminal for 3 divisions. Not far behind, the 103 kicks up the dust as it sails to its next destination. Now, not much more than a flag stop. The 103 will pause just long enough not to break the rules. Green River is an anomaly on the Union Pacific. While freight yards such as Cheyenne and Laramie have waned in importance, the flat yard in Green River has continued to grow. Soda ash, or sodium carbonate, can be found in a huge deposit west of town. Since 1947, when my grandpa started hauling truckloads of lumber to the mines, the tonnage and scope of mining has grown by leaps and bounds. Used in everything from car windshields to soft drinks, soda ash is big business, and multiple locals leave every day for the mines beyond Peru Hill. Green River is also where crews coming and going from the UP's line to the Pacific Northwest are based. The 105, in days past, would have had a lengthy stay in Green River as it gathered up through Pullmans and coaches from other trains for destinations as far spread as Butte, Montana, Spokane, Washington, and Boise, Idaho. The grade to get out of the Green River Valley can be deceptive. Yard engines were frequently used to shove trains to the top of the grade so they wouldn't stall on the hill. Today, the 105 makes good time as it races to Granger Junction and its date with the Oregon Short Line. Green River is a place near and dear to my heart. Not only does it have a well-placed pedestrian bridge to watch the action day and night, but it is here that Grandpa went to work managing the old Tri-State Lumberyard, which by '69 was Boise Cascade. Dad graduated high school here in 1955, right before the end of full-time steam operations. Dad used to say he was one of the few students at school whose father didn't work for the Union Pacific. Imagine watching the biggest and the best of UP's famous locomotive roster coming and going every 15 minutes. No wonder he liked trains. He didn't have a chance. It's now 4:25 p.m., and the 103 has 3.5 hours to cover the ground between here and Ogden, Utah, 170 miles away. Passing the old roundhouse and crossing what will be the Green River Bridge, the 103 jams the throttle into Notch 8 to surmount Peru Hill. Miles ahead, the 105 doesn't even slow for the junction and the beginning of the Oregon Short Line, a subsidiary UP company that began construction at this spot in 1881. It's easy running from here to Pocatello, Idaho, where it's due at 8 o'clock tonight. With no traffic in front of it, the 103 can run with wild abandon across the western Wyoming desert. The only obstacle in front of the next stop of Evanston, Wyoming, is where the grade stiffens for Aspen and Altamont tunnels. Not only were these the longest tunnels bored by the Union Pacific, this was the last place to be double-tracked between Omaha and Ogden in 1947. The sun is really getting low as the 103 drifts along the Bear River Valley. There was a common expression in Dad's high school yearbooks, "Yours until the Bear River walks." It's quaint, like the town of Evanston, but I like it. This will make for a neat scene in the years to come. With its little stone depot and intact engine facility that's now turned into a convention hall, recreating Evanston in miniature should be fairly accurate. The 103 plays hide-and-seek with the sunset. Late afternoon showers cast shadows long and deep as the railroad descends through Echo and Weber canyons. This area was quite hard on the gangs that had to figure out how to double-track the railroad in 1916. Until 1946, these tunnels had full-time watch guards armed with telephones to notify the dispatcher of stalled trains. The 103 drops down on the original main, now meant for westbound traffic, as it has the steepest parts of the grade between Evanston and Ogden. This area will be the scenic highlight of the Wyoming Division Historical Society, and it means something to me. My grandmother's grandfather was a Mormon bishop in Heber City, Utah. He received one of the grading contracts for several miles of the original Transcontinental Railroad construction through here in 1868. But don't be worried about the styrofoam. I won't quit until I can faithfully recreate the dramatic red sandstone cliffs that earn this place the name Echo Canyon. It's now 7 p.m. Like these passenger trains themselves, the light will be gone in short order. In less than a year's time, a tradition that reached back to 1869 will be gone, dropped below the horizon of history. From Ulysses S. Grant to Elvis Presley, America has taken advantage of the strategic middle route and relied upon the Union Pacific to get them there. But like each day must end, the famous fleet of city trains will soon go dark, but not before going out in colorful and a sometimes magical style.